Look at it how you like, or take it how you will, canoeing is great fun. Whether you go in for racing, or for slalom, or just go touring, it is enormous fun. But it isn't as easy as it looks. When experts, like this man, jump into their canoes, and then maneuver them through a gate like this, it looks like child's play. But it is only after a great deal of practice that anyone can handle a canoe in this way. Of course, you can learn the hard way, by yourself. But it is easier if you find someone to teach you. Best of all, to join a class with a qualified teacher. Even paddling wants learning properly. In your class, it will be great fun with all the other members, and you'll be taught properly. In this film, we are going to show you just the basic skills in canoeing, the things that you must know right from the very start if you want to be good at it. Here you see how you should carry your canoe on one shoulder with the paddle in the other hand down to the river bank, where you put it down to prepare yourself for your voyage. You should be correctly dressed, with gym shoes on your feet, so that if you do step out onto a broken bottle, it won't matter, and a pair of shorts, because you may find yourself swimming and you can't swim in longs, and a brightly coloured jersey, so that when you are swimming, your friends can see you easily and come to your assistance. Now get the proper equipment out of the canoe. A spray cover, and a life jacket. These put on properly according to the maker's instructions. And once on, make sure that they are secure. Now pick up your paddle for the one piece of land drill that you have got to do, with the paddle balanced on top of the head and your elbows at a right angle or at arm's bend, whichever you like, for the width of grip. One hand grips and the other is loose on the loom, that is the round part, so that as you paddle, the blades, which are at right angles, are turned to strike the water correctly. As the demonstrator lifts his gripping hand, his left hand here, the right hand blade will twist and so strike the water flat and thus pull him along. Now take up your canoe and, stepping to the landing stage to put it into the water, put the paddle down and have your toes sticking out over the edge. Then drop the canoe into the water and hold on to it. Now for getting in. Yes, even getting in needs a proper way of doing it. First of all, one hand on dry land and one hand on the prow of the cockpit. One foot in, fairly far forward, and just over the centre line so that the other foot will go in beside it. Then put the other foot in and sit down, and the quicker you get over that bit, the better. Now get hold of the canoe with your knees, either up under the coaming or up in the coaming and outwards, whichever you prefer, so that you are virtually wearing the canoe. When you wobble your knees, your canoe will wobble too. But if you sit still and the canoe wants to wobble, it can't. Now put on the spray cover. If it has press studs, these should be on top, so that should you want to get out in a hurry, they will quickly come undone. Now push off from the landing stage with your hand, not the end of the paddle. And since we've told you that you're likely to find yourself swimming, let's find out how you get out from underneath the canoe. Lean forwards and capsize. Then push downwards with your hand, and your life jacket will bring you to the surface. Collect your paddle and go to one end of the canoe and start to tow it ashore. You can swim on your back or your face, and you can pull it or you can push it, but quickly swim it to the side of the river. Once there, put your paddle on the bank so that it cannot drift away, and pick the canoe up straight away as high as you can. Turn it over and get it to the end where it will empty the most easily, and push it down so that all the water that is in it will collect at your end. Then pick it up and turn it over in one gesture. Go on doing this until the canoe is entirely empty of all the water in it. Now we'll get in at knee depth. Here the paddle is held in the hand furthest from you, and the foot nearer the canoe gets put right down inside. Then, with the other hand behind you on the coaming, you sit down and drag the last foot in when you can. Again, the hand furthest from you with the paddle on the coaming, the nearer foot right down inside, the hand behind you to balance you, and sit down. Then, when you're sure you're quite safe, drag the other foot in and put it away. Have you comfortably placed yourself in the canoe? A hand on both sides of the boat will help you alter your position. Now for paddling forwards. Here, the upper arm gets extended as far as it can reach forwards towards the bow, even twisting the shoulders a little, and the lower arm pulls the paddle back until the elbow reaches the hip, when it withdraws the paddle blade from the water. Neither hand goes over the center line of the canoe, and the upper hand is approximately at eye or forehead level. And the blade strikes the water flat and is carried smoothly down the side of the canoe. To paddle backwards, the paddle is taken right over the canoe to one side, and as one paddles backwards, one looks over each shoulder to see where one is going. Here again, the upper hand is extended right out in front and pulls the paddle backwards, while the lower one pushes until the elbow reaches the hip, when again the paddle is taken out of the water. Notice that again the blade strikes the water flat as it paddles the canoe backwards. Start doing these two things slowly and gradually work up your speed until you can do it quite fast. Then learn to put on the brakes by quickly climbing into reverse from paddling forwards, and also quickly climbing into forwards from paddling backwards. Go on doing this until you can paddle flat out, and by the same token you know exactly how fast you can put on the brakes to avoid an obstacle. And now we've got to learn how to steer our canoe. This is done by a sweep stroke. There are two halves to the sweep stroke: the bow sweep and the stern sweep. Let's start with the bow sweep. Here, start as though you were going to paddle forwards, but instead of the paddle blade being flat, it is upright. Put it into the water and, keeping that arm stiff, sweep it in as wide an arc as you can right round to the stern of the canoe. That will turn the canoe away from the paddle blade. The stern sweep is exactly the same stroke, but done exactly in the reverse, from the stern to the bow. Having got those two right, now put them together, with one on one side and the other on the other, and you can turn the canoe round as it were on a sixpence. Now for the draw stroke, a stroke to move the canoe away from the landing stage, or towards it, exactly sideways. Here the paddle is held in as vertical position as is possible and drawn into the side of the canoe. The hand nearest to the water is the control hand, and just as the paddle reaches the gunwale of the canoe, that hand drops to twist the paddle through 90 degrees and push it out exactly where it came from. Always practice all these strokes on both sides. Now for the slap support, which is closely related to the draw stroke, except that the paddle is horizontal instead of vertical. Here the blade is flat over the water, and you lean over until you think you are going to capsize, when you slap the water and knock yourself up again. And at the same time, you drop your hand, just as in the previous stroke, to withdraw the paddle blade out of the water. Don't forget to practice it on both sides. You can't afford to be handed in canoeing, because things will always happen on your weak side. As a matter of fact, every canoe will sit with the gunwale under water like that, before it will think about capsizing. But if you want to support yourself for a long time, nearly capsizing, then the stroke to use is sculling for support. Here the paddle is moved in a small arc out to one side of the canoe, and the blade is twisted slightly so that the leading edge is turned upwards, back edge backwards, front edge forwards. Thus it tries to scull itself up out of the water all the time. All right, if it wants to scull itself up out of the water, then you can lean on it and support yourself. Don't forget that other side. And so lastly to another form of sculling, which is closely related to this one, but rather like the draw stroke and the slap support. It merely means that the paddle itself is in the vertical position instead of the horizontal. This is the sculling draw. In order to get this, start with the paddle in the vertical position instead of the horizontal. Here the leading edge of the paddle will be away from the side of the canoe, and you will push it to and fro parallel to the side of the canoe. Then you will move the canoe exactly sideways again. And so you can come back to your landing stage. Here, get out, which is exactly the same as getting in, but done in the reverse order, and take your canoe out of the water and park it properly at the top of the bank, which is upside down with the paddle underneath it. But you want to go on practicing, so let's get back into it again. Have you got the canoe properly with your knees? Once on, will the spray cover come off if you want it to? And this time you can draw out from your landing stage. And start by practicing capsizing. You want to be perfectly happy at capsizing. Then get in and carry on again, paddling forwards, paddling backwards. Putting on the brakes. Sweeps. Bow sweep. Stern sweep. And then the two together. How far can you lean before you have to slap? Sculling for support. And finally, sculling draw back to your landing stage. Perhaps finishing with 1 or 2 draw strokes right in. And then eventually, with a lot of practice, you will feel as easy as this expert looks, almost appearing not to stop paddling to get the canoe to turn. Practicing in his gait or any other obstacle until, even when something goes minorly wrong, it doesn't matter. Then you can use only part of the basic strokes according to what you want the canoe to do, or you can muddle them together. You can begin to lean out on your sweep turns to get the canoe to turn the faster. Or perhaps you can put sculling for support and sweep together to get the canoe to turn even faster yet on a telemark. Practice, 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 until all things become easy. And even when something unexpected happens, as a girl comes down to the water's edge and playfully throws a football at you, a slap support will stop you from capsizing. Then you draw over to the ball, pick it up, and throw it back to her. and then scull into the side, perhaps to remonstrate. Or perhaps even to make another girlfriend.